Welcome to today's webcast, What's New in Paxata's 2018 release. Before we get started, I'd like to go through a few housekeeping items. If you experience any technical difficulties, you can reach out to us through the chat channel in the lower right panel of your screen. Please feel free to ask questions throughout today's webcast by typing them into the questions box. We will have a Q&A session at the end of today's webcast. If we don't get a chance to answer your questions immediately, we'll be sure to do so directly following today's event. This webcast is being recorded and will be available on demand. I'd now like to introduce you to today's speakers, Fernaz Irfan, Senior Director of Product Marketing and Strategy, and Mike White, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Paxata. Fernaz?
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webcast today. We are very excited to introduce you to our newest capabilities we brought to the market, our fall of 2018 release. Looking at the registration, we have recognized we have quite a bit of our existing customers, but there's a lot of you that are new to Paxata. So what I like to do is to spend just a quick minute on what Paxata is and what we do, and then spend majority of the time on what's new in the product and also show you a demo that Mike will carry on. All right. So Paxata Information Platform is really designed to turn raw data into information. The platform is adaptive, meaning that it really can adapt to different data sources and data formats. That be your relational data sources or any sort of complex data that might be nested or semi-structured that you get from JSON or XML type of formats. Paxata turns all of that into a tabular format and provides an easy user interface for you to interact with the data. The platform is also adaptive to different use cases and downstream applications. We have majority of our customers are using Paxata for data analytics, business intelligence type of downstream applications, but we also have quite a bit of customers that are using Paxata to create master catalogs, master product information, or master customer information, or any sort of business application that will consume your prepared data downstream. Paxata is suitable for that. The entire platform is underpinned by a set of smart algorithms that really help you detect joins between your data sets or recognize similarities of different data sets or anomalies in it. So it really helps you accelerate that data to information cycle. And then it's auto-documented. So every step, every transformation you make on your data is going to get recorded automatically, so you can always go back and have that repeatability, reusability, and traceability, as well as governance built into the platform. Now, if you look at the data preparation use cases, there are two types or two styles of data preparation. One style of preparation is very exploratory, meaning that you are actually going to be able to see all the data, all the values and the content of your data, and be able to discover rules on the fly, discover what what data quality issues might be hidden in your data, and apply transformation rules on the fly in line to turn that data into information. And on the other side, you have cases in which you don't need to interact with your entire data set. You can interact with a subset of it or none at all, and you're able to really apply preconceived type of rules on top of your data in a batch scenario, in what we call a batch mode, or somewhere in between. And the reality is that depending on your use case, you may want to pick one versus the other. There are some examples here on the slide. For example, where you have projects that have an urgency. We've seen this with compliance reporting type of customers where, you want to really prepare and create quality data on the first round, and you don't want to go over and over into iterations of batch mode transformation of your data. You want to get this done the first time and come out with a high quality of data, and that's where you really want to look at your entire body of the data interactively and prepare it that way. Or there may be cases in which your data is very unknown to you. Maybe it's coming from external sources, or it's a very old legacy system that you don't know or recognize all the values of your data, or perhaps it's very nested structures where some values of your data are really hidden in the structure. In those cases, an all interactive mode on the entire body of the data makes sense, but in cases in which your data comes in a static mode and maybe doesn't change as much, more of a workload of a batch scenario is still suitable. And the whole point of our release in this fall of 2018 is that this should be your choice. This should be something that you decide whether or not an all interactive mode makes sense to you, or an all batch mode makes sense to you, or for your data preparation, or a combination of both. So the adaptive workload management is really about you having the ability to dial up your interactive workloads or dial it down depending on your use case. And this is something that's truly unique to Paxata in the market, where we give you the choice to set your data volumes that you interact with, or you run into in a batch type of workload. And no one else, no other data prep product in the market has this capability. So to summarize some of the details of the product. Okay. The first one is what I just mentioned, the fact that you are in control of choosing your data volumes and interactive window size for your workload, and use progressive loading to jumpstart your data preparation. You'll see this in the demo that Mike is going to show in a couple of minutes. And because Paxata is truly a multi-tenanted platform, you have the ability to configure and set these settings per tenant. So you may have a tenant that's marketing related, and in that you need a higher volume of your data to be available to you in an interactive mode, and in an HR tenant, a smaller portion of data is required, and you have the ability to really configure and adapt per tenant. And last but not least, is the capability that we brought into the market, our elastic resource allocation service. And what this is that it really takes the pressure off you as an admin to identify and determine your peak workloads and allocate resources for it. Paxata, instead, under the covers, it determines that for a certain data prep job, how much compute resources you need. And it dynamically allocates that. It dynamically allocates that across a set of shared ephemeral clusters and runs the job, finishes the compute calculations for the data prep, and once it's done, it releases that cluster and those resources back. So for customers that are on a VPC or a VNet mode, private cloud environment, this is a huge benefit where you can actually optimize your costs. How do we do this is that we are the first data preparation engine that has come to the market with having support for Kubernetes, and we're leveraging Kubernetes under the covers to do this dynamic allocation of resources for the high volume repeated batch jobs that you run within Paxata. Having said that, we also have support for Yarn, Amazon EMR, and Microsoft Azure HD Insight, which are the other orchestration frameworks in the market that are pretty popular. And as part of our release, we also ran a full beta program, and we had a lot of our customers, we have had our partners to really participate in it, and we have been really fortunate to see that we, with the new capabilities we have brought to the market, we've been able to have value and add value, incremental value to our existing customers as well as our partners. So that's a quick introduction on what the new release is, and I'll turn it over to Mike at this point to help you see the product in action. Mike?
All right. Thanks a lot, Pranav. That was great. I am going to begin by creating a brand new data preparation project. Excuse me. Okay, so I just want to highlight in particular the adaptive workload management scenario. And I kind of devised this scenario where I thought it would be really useful to have that capability to be able to look at a portion of a much, much larger file in support of a data migration initiative. And so I'm going to just jump right in and we'll call this production. And I'm going to begin with a data set that I'm going to pull from the source. Right now, those of you that are customers are familiar perhaps with some of the latest capabilities and in particular the intelligent ingest capabilities. And I'm just going to highlight that a little bit for those of you that are new to Paxata. Paxata allows you to connect to a wide variety of sources. In this case, based on my user profile, I have access to 3. But Paxata provides the ability to connect to relational systems, to data lakes, to cloud storage, to FTP, web services like Salesforce, and even local files. So I have the ability to connect to a wide variety of sources as well as formats, as we'll see in a moment, as the business analyst, as the data practitioner. And in this scenario, I want to run through a kind of a very simple customer data migration scenario from end to end. Now I have here a customer listing, the complete customer listing, and you will see momentarily that this is a very large file. And while that's loading, I'm actually going to also bring in a local file just to highlight another capability here. All right, I'm going to bring in my demographics by city data set as well to support an enrichment scenario. So you can see these are both being loaded from the different systems. And what I love about this is that Paxata can connect to different systems at the same time in the same screen and even figure out whether or not the data set includes an extension, what kind of data it is, what is the format. So you can see there's some built-in intelligence here. It figures out that the demographics by city data set is actually an XML file. And if I just click on the override here, you can see the original raw data looks like this. And I come from a business analytics background, and let me tell you, I never like to see a format like this. I much prefer the bottom right quadrant where the data is in a nice tabular format, makes it really easy to review, makes me feel like I'm at home for the many hours that I spent in Excel. I'm able to have a much easier time of reviewing the data, and you'll see being able to profile it and identify data quality issues once I'm in my data preparation project. Now that being said, let me pop back over to this full customer listing. This is 104 million records. I'm pretty excited about this scenario because I remember about 8 years ago I was doing a data analytics, and my team struggled with a 6 million row table. And so it kind of boggles my mind that I'm now able to look at, and interact with 104 million records. Now, the focus for the scenario today is just to look at a portion because time is of the essence, and we only have so many days to facilitate this migration scenario. But I did want to highlight this preview window makes it nice and easy for me to validate that this is in fact the data set that I want to profile and to review in my project. I can go in and I can rename the columns, I can reorder them, I can hide them, and just bring into Paxata what I need. In this case, I'll just go ahead and bring in all 12 columns, and I will hit finish. Now, Paxata is bringing in a snapshot of those two data sets from their relative sources. So the customer listings file coming from S3 and the demographics data set coming from my local machine. And notice that that one popped up, it's completely loaded, and it is ready to go. I could select it. However, I want to pause and just wait a moment just to highlight what is brand new here. Notice this brand new icon, this two concentric circles. So in the middle, you see the progress of the data that I will be able to interact with. And in this case, this is a configurable limit. So here at Paxata, we talk about how you do not need to rely on a fixed sample. You can interact with much larger volumes of data. And in cases where you want to just look at a snippet of the data, but still be able to take advantage of something much larger than perhaps just 50,000 records or 10 megabytes, I'm able to pull in 2 million records. So we're going to let this go ahead and finish. And the limit I've had set here for today is 2 million. That could be lower, it could be higher. And in this case, that's what's configured. Now, while that's loading, I'm also going to add a tag here. And a tag is nice because it's going to allow me to facilitate tagging this. This is going to be part of my data migration related data sets. I can also go in, I can look at the metadata, but I want to emphasize that in this scenario, otherwise, having a 104 million record data set would have taken quite a while to load. But instead of having to wait for that, I can just look at 2 million records and start building out my data preparation workflow, because I have a good idea of some of the things that I want to look for and some of the issues that might be in the data. But again, this data represents some consolidated tables and data sets, and so I actually need to go in and profile a little bit. Great, now we see that nice green check mark, and it is ready to select. I'm going to go ahead and select it. That will bring in that portion of the data into my project. All right, so notice here we have this new little icon. And making it very clear, I'm only looking at a portion of my full data set, just a 2 million row portion. But the nice thing is I can get going. I've got a head start on interacting with this data. So I'm going to enable what I always like to do from the get-go is enable patterns, spaces, and ranges. And that just gives me a good sense for the content and helps me understand where I might have repeating values, where I might have some sparsity I need to deal with. I see in the gender column, I've got some missing cells. And I can also get a sense for any numeric columns, the min, the max, the average. So that's a nice, just be able to understand some of those things at a glance. And what I like to do next is dig in a little bit further. Now, before I do that, I just want to emphasize I have access to all 2 million records in this scenario. And again, we're highlighting the adaptive workflow management capability today. That Paxata does allow you to interact with the full population of data. All right, so some things I want to look in particular is the customer city. I know that's going to be a key. That's going to be a key column that I'm going to want to analyze on a map in my BI layer. I want to also take a look at the state or province information and just make sure it's completely populated. Great, the green data quality bar indicates to me that all the values are populated. They're all the same type, and that type is text. So that's good to see, but I am seeing that I have a high number of states and provinces, 69. I expect something much less than that if you add up the total number of provinces in Canada and states in the US. It should be something less than 69. And if I go in and do a sort, it becomes a little bit more obvious that I've got a mixture of uppercase and lowercase. So at this point, I might want to go in and just take care of that, normalizing that data. So I'm going to say, let's change this into capital case. Now here, I'm going to actually take it one step further. And I want to emphasize this because the principle is what's important here. I can apply a transformation to multiple columns at a time. And I can also do so based on a criteria. So I can actually make this a dynamic transformation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to say any of my string columns or text columns that show up in this data set ever, I want to make sure that they are capital case, right? And Paxata says, well, that's 8 columns in this scenario. The beauty of this is, as I automate this and run it, even if I get additional columns that show up, those will also be subject to that transformation. All right, I want to do one more thing here, actually 2 more things before we finish up. And that is, actually let me do one more thing. I want to create a rule. So one of the things I'm really concerned about with my migration is to make sure I am not loading any email addresses that may be problematic. So I'm going to create a computed column, and I'm going to just paste in my computed column here. And what that is essentially taking advantage of a regular expression to match a pattern and to tell me to set it to false if there is an email that doesn't fall within the standard ASCII range. So I'll just call this standard ASCII. The reason I want to do that is I want to be able to see, do I have any email addresses that fall outside of that range? Because if I do, that's gonna mean big time problems downstream. And I do. What do you know? I have 5. Wow. So it's a good thing we looked at 2 million records, because if we looked at a tiny sample, we might have completely missed this. So we see we have 5 records that fall outside of the standard ASCII, and we see accented characters and things like that. Those are going to cause some issues. For now, I'm going to create a lens and just capture this view of the data, and I'm going to call these, let's just call them bad records. I'll save that, and to end, I'm going to flip it over to all of the records that are good to go, and I'm going to create one more lens, and I'm going to call this my, let's call it my ready to migrate. I'll save that, and lastly, I will publish. So everything I've been doing up until now, it's like I've been doing it in memory in Spark. It's like I've been in a virtual sandbox, if you will. But when I hit publish, I'm actually creating a new physical data set that is persisting in the data library, right? And the data library is just the repository for all the data sets that I'm going to be, or my team is going to be working with in a data preparation scenario. And again, note that this is just a portion of the data, but what would it look like to now apply that set of transformations, the few that I did, to the full 104 million records? So let's go back into that project. I will just go in and open the source for this. I will select automation, and you can see that I'm not going to belabor this, but I got one screen here, and the beauty of this is, as the business analyst, I can configure this myself. So I can actually set up a job. Of course, this is based off of permissions, and I have the permission to do so in this case. I want to set up a job that will just run the set of steps against the full set of transactions. And so let's just run it once. I'm going to run it tonight at 11 when I hope to be sleeping, but we'll see. I have a 1-month-old daughter at home. And then I can indicate who gets notified upon error or success. And then finally, any lenses, I can have them land wherever I want them to land. So in this case, I'll just select the ready to migrate records, land in the data library, as well as, in this case, ADLS. And so I'll specify that here. I can even specify the format. I'll just put delimited for now. And I hit save, and that's it. That job is now configured, and it will run at the set time. Or I could just click add to queue, and it will go. So I can click on this, and then I can see that once it's ready, it will actually kick off this job and run those set of steps on the full 104 million records. Now, with that said, I'm going to jump over and just show you an example of what that looks like, and you can actually see, notice the rest of the file is loading. But let me show you an example from earlier. If I just look at all the versions of this data set that I ran earlier, a very similar scenario, a 2 million row portion, I designed my set of steps, but I ran it against 96 million records, and you can see what that looks like clearly. It's the full output, and from there I can export it wherever I need to. Okay, great. I was trying to take you through the whole end-to-end scenario. I think we did it. I think at this point, I will just go ahead and conclude by saying, that's just a glimpse of adaptive workload management. And for enterprise big data, the choice is up to you how you want to define your interactive window. And if there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Awesome.
At this time.
Yep. Thank you so much, Mike. That was great. All right. So very quickly before we get into questions, I wanted to invite everyone, if you guys are interested, we have a 30-day free trial that you can use in Paxata Cloud or your own Azure or AWS environment. So go ahead and try it, and we're here to answer any questions you have, and hopefully you find this useful. We're seeing some questions come through, but if you have questions, please make sure that you type it into the Q&A box in the webinar window. And so there's a couple of questions that have come in. One is around exporting your prepared data into another application. Can Paxata export what you prepare into a different application? Mike, would you like to answer that?
Yes. Short answer is yes, absolutely. Any data set that you have in the data library, you can see here, I can export it wherever, right? It could be a database, it could be my local machine. Click on export. Any data source I have configured and that I have permissions to see, I can land it there, and I can even land it directly into BI tools. In this example, I have Tableau server set up, and we're happy to share out the supported list of data destinations that we have too.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And then we have one more question that's asking if Paxata offers sampling. And Mike, would you also like to take that?
Yes, that is a great question. And the way we look at it as the data preparation leader and pioneering the space is that with the adaptive workload management approach, it's different from sampling in that the interactive size is not fixed. So most sampling approaches have a fixed sample size, and the end users need to pick an algorithm and configurations to choose the data that fits into that fixed size. But with adaptive workload management, the interactive limits are not fixed. You can expand or contract your interactive window to suit your use case needs. So rather than working with configurations on how to pick the data to fit the sample size, this allows you to expand your sample window to fit your data and your cost situation.
Great. Sounds good. And we are at the bottom of the hour for this 30-minute webcast. We would like to thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and hope you find this useful. We're looking forward to having you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.